Wait, you used my savings for your cruise? Mom didn't flinch. She sipped her coffee like it was a normal Sunday morning. Well, honey, we figured you weren't using it right now. And you're young. You'll make more. It was like the air got sucked out of the room. I stared at them. Mom in her floral robe, Dad still in his weekend baseball cap, flipping through the travel itinerary like nothing was wrong. I was supposed to be moving into my first apartment next month. That $8,000 was everything I had saved working double shifts at the diner and freelancing graphic design projects at night. My entire summer gone. Dad finally looked up. It's just a cruise, Jamie. It's not like we blew it at a casino. We deserve a break. I felt my throat tighten, but I stayed still, calm. Outside, the morning sun poured through the windows. Inside, something in me snapped, but not loud. Quiet. Focused. Cold. They thought they could get away with it. They were wrong. I'm Jamie Thompson, 24, born and raised in St. Louis, Missouri. I've never been one to ask for much. I paid for my own community college degree, got my certification in digital design, and took on every side hustle I could to save up. That money wasn't just savings, it was freedom. It was the deposit for my apartment downtown, away from this house, away from always being treated like the family intern instead of a daughter. I'd been living at home since graduation, helping out with bills, groceries, even car repairs. They always said, "We're a team, Jamie." But teams don't steal from each other. I remember the night I started saving. I was 19, sitting on the floor of my room with my grandma Nora's voice echoing in my head. "Baby, you want something real in this life? You better build it yourself. No one's gonna hand it to you." She died the next year, but her photo sits on my desk, smiling, head wrapped in her favorite blue scarf. She was the only one who never made me feel like an afterthought. Meanwhile, my parents, Karen and Steve, always had a way of making my success feel like an inconvenience. When my older brother, Chad, dropped out of college and moved back home, they threw him a welcome-back barbecue. When I landed a contract to design a local bakery's branding, Mom said, "That's cute, sweetie, but maybe don't get your hopes up." Still, I tried to believe they were just distracted. Maybe they didn't realize how hard I was working. Maybe if I just kept showing up, doing the dishes, paying rent on time, covering Chad's part when he forgot, they'd finally see me. Then they took my savings. That was the moment I realized they saw me just fine. They just never respected me. They treated my work like a piggy bank they could crack open. They called it borrowing, but there was no plan to pay me back. No apology. Just travel brochures, cruise photos, and smug entitlement. So, I made a plan of my own. A quiet, calculated one. Because if they thought I was just going to roll over and smile while they boarded that ship, they didn't know me at all. I waited until the night before their flight. They were packing in the living room, Karen folding resort wear, and Steve double-checking his passport. The energy was light, smug. They still had no idea I'd even touched the cruise documents on Dad's laptop. I walked in calmly, holding a manila envelope. No drama. No yelling. "Hey," I said. "Before you go, you might want to take a look at this." Steve looked annoyed. Karen didn't even look up. I slid the envelope onto the coffee table and stood back. Inside were two things: a printed email from the cruise line and a copy of the account statement showing the transfer from my savings. The email subject line read, "Confirmed. Name change request, Jamie Thompson." Karen blinked. "What is this?" "I called the cruise line last week. Told them I was the primary payer. Because I am." I showed them the bank statement. Had the names on the tickets legally changed to mine, and a guest of my choice. Dad's face turned red. You can't do that." "Oh, but I did. And I even upgraded the room. Balcony suite." Karen stood up, flustered. "You're not serious." I smiled, calm as ever, dead serious. They had stolen my money, so I took back the trip. The silence after I said that could have shattered glass. Karen looked like she'd just swallowed her tongue. Steve, meanwhile, shot up from the couch like I'd lit it on fire. "That's theft, Jamie. We planned this for months." I crossed my arms. "With my money. We're your parents," he barked. We were going to pay you back. Really? I asked.
When?
Before or after the spa treatments and private snorkeling tour? Karen finally found her voice. This was supposed to be a celebration. Your father just retired. We needed this. Then maybe you should have saved for it like I did. I leaned forward slightly. But instead, you used the money I worked 2 jobs for. You didn't even ask. Karen started crying. The kind of tears I'd seen her weaponize 100 times. We did everything for you growing up. This is how you repay us. And there it was. The guilt card. I didn't flinch. I'm not repaying anything, I said. I already did. Every month I paid rent here, even though you never asked Chad to. Every time I picked up groceries, covered for his gas, gave up my weekends to help with things around the house. I earned that money. And you stole it. You're being dramatic, Steve grumbled. That's when someone else stepped in. From the hallway, my brother's girlfriend, Amber, poked her head in. She had apparently been listening the whole time.
No, Steve.
She's not. You both screwed her over. And I've seen you do it for years. Karen whipped her head around. Excuse me? I've lived here 6 months, Amber said, stepping into the room. I've watched Jamie clean up your messes, cover your bills, get treated like a servant while Chad plays video games and skips job interviews. And now you're mad. She finally stood up for herself. Even I was a little stunned. Steve looked like he might explode. You don't know what you're talking about. Amber walked over and stood beside me. I know you never even thanked her for covering that $600 car bill last winter. I saw her Venmo notification. Karen's tears dried up real fast. I can't believe this, she said, more to herself than to anyone else. Oh, believe it, I said. I'm done being your fallback fund. Steve shook his head. You're throwing away your family over a vacation. No, I replied, walking toward the door. You threw it away when you showed me exactly how little you value me. I stopped, turned slightly, and added, but don't worry, I'll send you a postcard. With that, I left the room, and for the first time in years, I felt like I had power. That night, I didn't go to my room. I went straight to Amber's. She looked at me, eyes still burning from what she'd just done. Was that okay? She asked. I didn't want to overstep. I shook my head, hugging her. Amber, that was more than okay. Thank you. She exhaled. It's been hard to watch. They treat you like an afterthought. I didn't even know how much I needed someone else to see that. To name it. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't dramatic. I'd been surviving. We ended up talking for hours. About life, about Chad, who, by the way, was conveniently out during the confrontation, and about our futures. She admitted she was thinking of leaving him. He doesn't respect me, she said. And if I'm being honest, I think I stayed because I was scared to start over. I looked her in the eyes. Starting over is hard, but staying in the wrong story is worse. The next day, I got up early, packed a single suitcase, and caught a lift to the cruise terminal. I brought my best friend Jessica as my guest. I hadn't told her everything until we got in line for boarding, but when I did, she burst out laughing. Jamie, you're like the quiet storm. I love it. We toasted champagne the minute we got on board. As the ship pulled away from the dock, I watched Miami's skyline shrink behind us. I didn't feel guilty. I felt free. For the first 2 days, I didn't answer a single call or text from home. Karen tried the sympathy angle first. Mom, we're devastated. Hope you're proud of yourself. 2 hours later, you embarrassed us. You've broken this family. Dad, call me. Let's talk about this like adults. But what was left to say? By day 3, I sent a single text back. Me. Boundaries are not betrayal. I needed this for me. I'll talk when I'm ready. I think what made them the angriest was that I hadn't come unglued. That I wasn't begging for forgiveness or second-guessing myself. I went parasailing. I got a massage. I danced under the stars with Jessica, barefoot on the deck. I slept like I hadn't slept in years. It was healing. And when I got back home, I didn't go straight to my parents' house. I went to my cousin Lily's. She had a spare room and offered it to me without hesitation. No judgment, no questions. A week later, I finally agreed to meet Karen and Steve at a cafe. They looked smaller. Karen reached across the table first. Jamie, we shouldn't have done that. We made a mistake. I didn't respond right away. I let the silence stretch. It made them squirm. I'm glad you said that, I finally replied. Because I've made a decision too. I'm moving out for good. I'll be taking the rest of my things this week. Steve sighed but didn't argue. That told me everything. But we're still family, Karen whispered. I nodded.
Sure.
But I'm setting some new rules. You don't get to dip into my accounts. You don't get to guilt me for saying no. And if that's a problem, then we're done here. To my surprise, Steve nodded slowly. Fair. Maybe Amber talked some sense into him. I kept it calm, firm, respectful. And I left feeling more powerful than I ever had. That was my closure. But there was more than closure. There was growth. Amber broke up with Chad the following week and moved into her own studio apartment. She texted me the night she got the keys. You inspired me. Thank you. That message meant as much to me as anything else. I started freelancing more seriously and landed a contract gig in event planning, a career I'd always wanted to explore but never had the guts to try. Within 2 months, I'd booked 3 weddings and a corporate gala. Every night, I wrote in a little journal my grandmother had once given me. She'd always told me, "Your peace is your responsibility." That phrase kept echoing in my head.
My peace.
My responsibility. 3 months later, I stood in the middle of a sun-drenched ballroom in downtown Orlando, clipboard in hand, headset on, watching a bride and groom twirl under fairy lights that I had personally arranged. The string quartet played softly in the background. Candles flickered. Laughter rang out like bells. And in the far corner, Jessica raised her champagne glass at me with a wink. I gave her a small smile, then turned back to the dance floor. This was my world now, one I built with my own hands, funded with my own boundaries. My little side hustle had become a full-fledged business. Jamie Monroe Events. Classy, boutique style, word of mouth only. And it was thriving. But the biggest difference wasn't the money. It was how I felt inside.
Light. Free.
I wasn't carrying my parents' disappointments anymore. I wasn't asking for their approval, like a starving child reaching for crumbs. I was feeding myself now, in every sense of the word. And they noticed. Steve had stopped calling. Karen, on the other hand, was slowly shifting. She'd started texting now and then, asking how I was. Never asking for anything. Just checking in. Testing the waters. One day, she sent me a photo of an old shoebox filled with baby pictures. One of me, toothless, clutching my first piggy bank. Her message read, "Found this while cleaning. Thought you might want it. You've always been smart with money. I'm sorry it took me this long to see it." I stared at that message for a long time before replying. Thank you, Mom. That means more than you know. I wasn't holding on to bitterness anymore. Not because they didn't deserve it, but because I didn't deserve to keep carrying it. Later that week, I visited my grandmother's old community garden, the same one she used to take me to when I was a kid. Her favorite bench, the one with her name etched into the wood, was still there. I sat down, pulled out the journal she'd given me, and wrote, "I finally chose myself, Grandma. I hope you're proud." A breeze rustled the trees above me, scattering petals across the walkway. And I smiled, because somehow in that moment I felt her with me. There's a peace that comes when you stop waiting for people to do right by you and start doing right by yourself. Amber came to visit the garden that day too. She brought iced coffees and a new book she'd been reading about boundaries and healing. "You're glowing, Jamie," she said. "This is your era." "Damn right it is." She laughed. "Can I be your assistant? I need a new job." "Only if you can carry 12 centerpieces and boss around groomsmen." "Oh, please. Try me." We sat there, 2 women who had chosen growth over guilt, freedom over fear. I realized that the real revenge wasn't the cruise or the confrontation. It was the life I'd built after. The version of me they never saw coming. One who no longer asked for permission. One who knew her worth. As the sun began to set, the The sky turned soft with pink and gold. I watched petals float to the ground, heard children laughing in the distance, smelled lavender from the nearby beds, and felt nothing but stillness inside me. My phone buzzed. A new inquiry for a fall wedding. I smiled and typed, "I'm available. Let's create magic." Before heading out, I walked over to the flower bed where Grandma had planted her favorite marigolds. They were in full bloom. Bright, defiant, unapologetic. Just like me. I plucked one, held it in my hand, and whispered, "Thank you for teaching me that peace is a choice. And I choose it every single day." And with that, I walked into my future, sunlight on my face, no longer anyone's backup plan, but the star of my own story.